So with the coaches out there who might be interested in coming and doing some training with us, what would they get out of it? So they would be helping learn some skills to help their players approach, I guess, training and also the match with the right mindset and different things they could practice. But
Yes.
also, I was just thinking of a question: is there any kind of training around how the coach's mindset can be altered or developed before a training session or even before a match or after a match to help their players perform a little bit better?
Absolutely, because there's this thing called projection. And so, whatever we're feeling, we tend to project that onto other people. So as coaches, if we get our minds right and we are doing everything from the coaching standpoint, in the best practices, then the player has a better chance of responding to what we're doing. Um, Coaches that are not sleeping enough, coaches that are stressed out or have high expectations that are being frustrated, um, are going to find it more difficult to get things done on a tennis court. So, um, and then part of the benefit will be coaches will get to observe as I guide, some students, and then coaches will get to practice some some of the practical neuroscience steps of observing behaviors in players, and then they will have tools that they didn't have before, and then that makes them more valuable. So the thing that's been very interesting to me is how much more valuable my private lessons are to people now, uh, than than they were before I started this journey. So I'm charging about twice as much now as I did 10 years ago, which is, it's above and beyond inflation, and that's just simply because I'm effective. I'm very effective. Sometimes people are put off by my fee until after they had the first lesson. And then once they've had the first lesson, then it sort of blows their mind and they're like, oh, well, you know, the money didn't seem did seem to be too low because what the benefit that was received was so great that they can't imagine themselves not continuing. And that's a really fun place to be delivering so much value to people that they really can take the lessons that they're learning on a tennis court and apply them to their lives. I've had people come back to me and say, "Oh, the thing that I learned, in my last lesson, I generalized that and I used that at work, and here's how I did that, and then I'm now more successful in my job." Um, so these types of principles for overall success are be very targeted towards tennis, but then they can also be generalized to other things.
Yeah, that's really good. It's kind of like it's hard to unlock a player's potential if you really can't unlock yours, and if you're getting frustrated about knowing that you can get a player a better result, but there seems to be some kind of blockage, and often you think, subconsciously at least, that it's the player's fault, they're just not getting it, which we
Mm,
covered it before in previous talks. And if they can just kind of, like, you can see their potential, and if they can just kind of unlock the right mindset, they won't just go up one or two levels, they'll end up going three or four or five levels better in a short time. And once you can get them to do that, then you can, yeah, the charge is like, if you're getting the result, people are happy because you're getting the result in half the time, a third of the time, so it's worth it. So
yes, absolutely. So yeah, let me give you a couple of vignettes on that. So in general, the number one thing that my new students face is that they are overthinking. And then each student sort of has their own profile. some players seem to want to build a checklist of first do this, then do that, then do that, then do that, and then they're trying to remember the checklist and execute the checklist. And unfortunately, some coaches' method of teaching plays into that and makes them build these checklists, right? The way to defeat that is to teach something as a whole. So you teach it as a whole, and then you introduce different pieces, but then you will focus on one piece at a time and not jump around and playing a game of whack-a-mole. But, I usually start with people's contact point, because a lot of other things can be wrong, but if the contact point is good, then a lot of good things can happen. Another thing that happens is some players have more subjective judgments, and a lot of that is because of the way they were raised. So you'll find that some people culturally, call things good and bad, and that's wrong, or that's good and that's, and they things are very black and white with them. And so then they get into the cycle of, if they hit a good shot, they feel pressure to hit another good shot. And then because they felt pressure, they got tense. Then they hit a bad shot. And then if they hit a bad shot, then they feel like they have to try harder. And then they get more tense, and then they hit another bad shot. And then they develop a complex in their mind that they're not capable of hitting two good shots in a row. What really they need to do is stop subjectively judging their performance. And then still other people are trying to figure it out. It's like, I want to comprehend, I want to understand how it works. But the analogy I give people is, you use a calculator, but maybe you think for a second about how the calculator works, but if you're punching the numbers in and it gives you an answer, you're happy that it just gave you an answer. It's not necessary for you to know how it works. So then what we'll get into is the difference between comprehension and apprehension, because comprehension is a high level brain skill, but apprehension is mid and low brain. And the more we can, as coaches, help our players to work from their low and their mid brain, then the more automatic that they're going to be